Testimonials and ceremonies broadcast remotely while the country continues to battle the coronavirus. After 3 consecutive elections and in the midst of a global pandemic, Benny Gantz and Benjamin Netanyahu signed a deal to form an emergency unity government. And U.S. oil prices plunge into negative territory for the first time ever Monday as demand sharply drops amid the global crisis. Hello, welcome to i24 News. David Matlin here live in Tel Aviv. Thanks for joining us as always. Now, Monday evening here in Israel, as we mentioned, commemorations began for Holocaust Remembrance Day with the official opening ceremonies broadcast live on television, remotely and online due to the virus outbreak and ongoing prohibition against public gatherings. Now, despite the pandemic clearly overshadowing this year's events, thoughtful tributes have highlighted the horrific events of the Holocaust through the stories of the survivors, while still showcasing the unprecedented challenges that they're facing today in this state of coronavirus isolation. Now, giving you a look at the statistics this year, the world Jewish population is estimated at 14.7 million people. 189,500 Holocaust survivors reside in Israel today, and 15,170 passed away this last year. And we'll have today's national moment of silence and the ceremonies here for you live 1 hour from now. Here's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the opening ceremony last night.
The outbreak of the coronavirus requires a worldwide fight against the virus, and not less important, it shows the importance of a national sovereignty. Unlike during the Holocaust, this time we identified the danger in time. We made important decisions like closing the country's borders and recruiting the entire state system for the fight against coronavirus. Particularly, we recruited the will, the commitment, and the responsibility of you, the citizens of Israel.
As the world remembers the victims of the Holocaust, many of their children are finding new ways to deal with the massive trauma of their parents. Our real-time Confi now, and Israel's Channel 12 has the story.
Numbers instead of names, tattooed on Jews in concentration and extermination camps, one of the more blatant symbols of the Nazis' final solution. Many Holocaust survivors barely spoke about their trauma, so a new phenomenon among their children has emerged, getting their parents' numbers tattooed on themselves, to honor them and to wash away the shame.
My father was in Auschwitz when he was just a kid. He never really spoke about it. And I decided that I had to do something to get him out of this loneliness, to show him that I understand him, that he isn't alone. It was an act of friendship, but he was against it. He didn't want these awful memories to live on. But I told him I would do it with or without him.
Hannah Rabinovich grew up with a father who was a Holocaust victim and survivor. Her dad also rarely spoke about his time in Auschwitz.
My father described in a proper way the 3-day ride to Auschwitz in a crowded train. There was no food or drinks. When they arrived at Auschwitz, they were all handed pajamas, a plate, and a spoon, and everyone got a number. Now, my father's number is interesting, and you see that in the pictures as well. It was so big, the number was stretched on the whole left arm. It was 65640, and he's very embarrassed about it because Israeli said, "You were like sheep, they led you, you're not brave." He used to wear long shirts to cover it, even in summer when it was boiling hot and there were no air conditioners. At a time where we didn't have air conditioning. The day before he died, this picture was taken of him, where you clearly see the tattoo. This was the only picture I took of it, and I knew that I'm going to save it to make a tattoo. And I was so emotional and afraid of my father's reaction, even though he had just died, so I made a mistake within the number. I later fixed the mistake, but it took me years.
Once a badge of shame, but for their children, a badge of defiance. The stigma of the Nazi camp tattoos is now being turned from shame into honor.
We'll continue to bring you the heavy stories of the Holocaust here throughout the day and later in this broadcast still. But more news to get to here after more than a year of an interim government in Israel. 3 consecutive elections and an already 3-month-old global pandemic crisis. Benny Gantz and Benjamin Netanyahu accepted the fact that they must work together and signed a deal last night to form a unity emergency government. Now we'll go to our correspondent Daniel Tzemach in Jerusalem here to get into the latest around this now. So The papers have been signed. Now, what are the main factors in this unity agreement? I know it's somewhat unusual. It's a 3-year government. It's been called an emergency government. What does it all mean?
Yeah, David, definitely unusual. It took quite some time, about around a year and a half for this to happen, and it'll be fully official likely in the coming 2 weeks. But if we go straight to what this really means and what the nature of this government is, and we'll take a look, David, what we're talking about indeed is a unity government. Now, Benjamin Netanyahu's trial is supposed to begin. But what's interesting here is that if the courts decide to take action and decide that Benjamin Netanyahu cannot be the prime minister, it means that he will be removed from the post and they will go to elections, not that Benny Gantz will step in and serve for the remainder of the term, whatever it may be. So this is a very interesting point here. And there's also several different pieces of legislation that are really, they're trying to rapidly get passed into Israeli parliament. Some that have to do with the nature of the cabinet, some that have to do with the nature of the rotation. And this is really an important issue that needs to be legislated so that there will be assurances that when it comes to that 18-month period after Benjamin Netanyahu has served his time, that Benny Gantz will indeed step in to the role as Israeli prime minister at that period. Now, both of them will be considered the prime minister. They'll even be sworn in together. But there are a lot of interesting pieces of legislation that are going to be passed likely in the coming days and in the coming weeks. Of course, after the government is fully instated and sworn in. Again, David, it's expected that that will happen.
Tel Aviv. Now, Israel is beginning to dream of the day after the coronavirus closures and indoor life for millions of citizens, as the infection rate has remained low and recoveries outnumbered new cases for another day in a row. Despite the optimism and slightly lifted public restrictions, Israel has a total of 13,883 diagnosed virus cases, and 181 people have now died from the illness. This includes a 48-year-old man who was pronounced dead last hour, reportedly with no pre-existing illness. But the focus this week has been on gradually reopening the economy and getting as many people back to work as possible while still adhering to the new health guidelines. For some perspective on how it's playing out on the streets of Tel Aviv, we're joined by our correspondent, Sarah Coates, here, giving us this perspective here of this the beach that everyone wants to know. Was it reopening, Sarah? But in reality, what are we seeing out there today? Are there more people coming out?
Yeah, there certainly are, David. Over the last few days, when these heavier restrictions were in place, this place was really a ghost town. Normally, there are so many people walking, running, exercising, walking their dogs along the Tayleta. And at this time of the year, normally there would be a lot of people down here on the beaches. But as per government regulations, the beaches remain closed. Although, David, this morning we have actually seen a fair bit of activity, given the circumstances, with people swimming and taking their dogs for a run on the beach. Now, as you mentioned, this is normally a very, very busy area, and we are, of course, coming up to that hour, 10 o'clock local time, when the siren will ring out for Holocaust Remembrance Day, where Israel comes to an absolute stop. People who would be normally exercising or walking along this area would stop and pay their respects as the siren rings out throughout the country. This year, David, though, people are expected to do that from their balconies. People are expected to come out and all stand in solidarity as this chilling siren rings out across the country. Now, so far along here, we haven't seen any police yet patrolling this morning, David, as we have been seeing over the last week or so, handing out fines to people who disobey the rules, who go swimming or who don't wear masks. And funnily enough, even though people, David, are supposed to be wearing masks by law, we actually haven't seen that many people wearing them along the beachfront here this morning, David.
So positive developments, perhaps concerning things we're seeing on the street. Obviously, everyone's staying tuned to the numbers and any further guidance from the government. Sarah, thanks for this view from the streets here in Tel Aviv. Now, Syrian air defenses went into action Monday night, firing at what Syrian state TV called hostile Israeli targets over the airspace of Palestine. Trump cited the dangers of the virus as well as the need to preserve jobs for current U.S. citizens as the reason for his halt on immigration. Now, the president's announcement came as the U.S. is beginning to focus more and more on reopening the economy and getting people back to work despite the ongoing outbreak. And staying in the U.S., New York Governor Andrew Cuomo reported 478 additional COVID-19 deaths in the last day, despite the great news there. Excuse me, it's the lowest one-day figure in more than 2 weeks. But now, as New York remains the epicenter, U.S. Governors in other U.S. states there are focusing on reopening the economy. Here's the story.
As states and cities look for a path forward, testing is at the top of their list.
The question is how fast can you increase the volume of tests? Because the more tests, the better. That is the axiom. The more tests, the better. Test nursing homes, test schools, test teachers, test prison facilities, but you need the volume of tests.
The president invoking the Defense Production Act for desperately needed swabs as governors push for more help accessing supplies.
I think until we have a national strategy and that everyone is working together for a good supply chain, we're going to have problems here.
It's not just diagnostic testing that's needed. New York began antibody testing today, but officials stress we don't yet know how effective those antibodies are.
There's an assumption, a reasonable assumption, that when you have an antibody that you are protected against reinfection. But that has not been proven for this particular virus.
Businesses adding new measures to keep workers safe. Amazon using thermal cameras to screen for fevers as the city of Detroit begins testing its essential workers. Early hotspots like New York City starting to see a decline in cases as others hit a surge. The White House task force singling out Boston, Philadelphia, and Chicago.
I think that the worst is yet to come for a lot of people.
Meantime, in South Carolina, the governor giving some retail stores and beaches the green light to reopen. 4 coastal communities, however, will keep existing restrictions in place, noting there is, quote, no evidence from medical professionals that indicates the threat has diminished.
No matter what, we're going to see an increase in transmission when we lift social distancing measures. It's really a question of how prepared are you to handle that resurgence in transmission.
Despite President Trump insisting governors should decide what's best, he continues to encourage protests.
I don't think it's helpful to encourage demonstrations and encourage people to go against the president's own policy. The president's policy says you can't start to reopen under his plan until you have declining numbers for 14 days, which those states and my state do not have.
A reminder that any reopening is not just about the economy, it's also about public health and safety.
Now, staying in the U.S., the price of West Texas Intermediate, the benchmark for U.S. oil, fell as low as minus $37.63 a barrel. Now, the negative price essentially means oil producers are paying their buyers to take possession as the world's storage capacity is rapidly filling. It is expected to reach full capacity in the next month. The price crash is a direct result of the sheer drop-off in world demand as the international economy remains shut down to fight the virus. The tumbling demand and infighting among oil producers has left the industry still struggling. Now, in typical fashion, when it comes to news out of North Korea, rumors and speculation indicate that Kim Jong-un may be in serious condition following surgery. Now, Kim recently missed the public celebration of his grandfather's birthday, April 15th, a major holiday in North Korea, which began the speculation about his well-being. Now, for now, nothing is confirmed, and despite the notable absence from the public side, not much is known. Now, on this Holocaust Remembrance Day, we'll continue to bring you our coverage throughout the day, and now with the focus on the incredible stories themselves and how they're being brought to us remotely this year. So unusual for everyone. We're joined by Osnat Spiegel. She's the global director of Zikaroma Salon. This is, I may roughly translate it, Remembrance in the Living Room. Thanks for being with us here now. First of all, thank you. This is a great initiative that you've led, and as far as I can see so far, it's really working. Would you agree?
Yes, an incredible evening yesterday here and around the world. Thousands of people joined numerous Zooms and really connected to the idea of still remembering and hearing testimonials, whether in person from second generation, third generation, or even the just watching recorded testimonials and talking why it is so important to keep remembering the Holocaust, especially this year, the majority of survivors can't really be with us.
Yeah, such an important factor to highlight this year, that so many of them, mostly alone, are right now isolated around the fire scares here. And this unique situation this year with this elderly community alone, was there a major technological hurdle for you to overcome? I mean, we're talking about the community that's over 80 years old by and large.
Yeah, it was, which is why in many cases the kids, grandkids of the survivors had to tell the stories instead of the parents or grandparents. And it really brought us to, to think about the world the day after the survivors are not going to be with us. And it actually brought us into the future and how important it is to make sure that this happens every single year, whether or not they can be with us.
Now, clearly, you've made a great contribution through this effort to the memories, to documenting the history through these survivors that are fading year after year now, being so elderly. Do you feel that your initiative this year has changed the way this story will be told going forward? Has it created basically a new way to capture the memories?
We try to stick to the platform, which means, hearing a testimonial and having a discussion later, and really connecting each in their own individual ways. And I think that, we've proven that this can go on regardless of anything that's going on around us. So, we spoke to hundreds and thousands of hosts all over the world. We have amazing people working with us year long. And we really try to stay true to what we believe in, which is little, to keep telling the stories, to keep giving the inspiration, to keep learning from the lessons of the Holocaust and the survivors, taking hope that they're giving us, and really bring it to the next generation.
Now, and we've seen basically snippets of your work and some of the big broadcasts in Israeli media and during some of the ceremonies. But how can your average viewer right now tune in and get to the bottom of all these stories or get access to them? What can you tell our viewers?
First of all, you can always go on our website and see everything that's available. We created a special, host kits for this year, both in Hebrew and other languages, that people can really connect to the family-oriented discussions, the different films, different testimonials, different ideas of how to actually run the Columbus at home and for your community.
Well, thank you so much, first of all, for the initiative and of course, for spending this time with us this morning on my show. Appreciate that. Let's not speak up. Well, that's all for us this hour at i24 News. I'm David Mettler, live in Tel Aviv. We'll be back at the top of the hour here as official ceremonies begin in Israel on the show, and we'll have that moment of silence for you and some other parts of the ceremony. Stay with us. Thank you.